twist. It rides, it won't let go of breath. A shiver of winds whisper, oh, a door stands open, but where does it go? She stands there staring, eyes like glass, a voice echoes from the past. It calls out for some face of graveyard. My dear friend, you cannot stay. You have to go.
The Fog. Once upon a time, in a quaint little village nestled in a lush green valley, there lived a little girl named Emily. Her house lay on the outskirts, close to the fields where wildflowers danced in the breeze and the hills rolled like waves stretching towards the horizon. Emily was a bright, curious child. Her hair was long and blonde and flowed past her waist. On this particular day, Emily felt an unusual energy within her, a restlessness that spurred her to run down the narrow dirt road that wound its way out of the village. Lined with a rotting white picket fence, the road seemed to stretch endlessly, as if beckoning her to follow it into the unknown. As her feet hit the ground, dust rose in clouds around her, and her laughter carried on the warm summer breeze. But soon, a change began to creep into the air. Emily heard a sound, low, almost like a distant rumble, growing louder with each passing second. At first, she thought it was the breeze whispering through the tall grass, or the rustle of leaves on the old oaks lining the road. Yet as she glanced over her shoulder, a chill settled over her. A dark fog was moving swiftly down the path, rolling towards her like a living shadow, swallowing everything in its path. The fog was thick and unnatural, its swirling tendrils curling as though alive, reaching toward her with an almost purposeful intent. The strange darkness stirred something primal within Emily, a fear she couldn't explain. She felt her heartbeat quicken as if urging her to run. She knew she had to escape, but no matter how fast she ran, the fog kept pace, moving with an unnatural speed, drawing closer as if it had her scent. Her legs began to ache. Her breaths came in quick, shallow gasps. The fog was relentless. It closed in around her, and with it, the air grew colder, damp, and heavy, making her feel like she was breathing through water. She felt the fog nipping at her heels, its chill seeping into her bones, draining her strength. She looked around, searching desperately for an escape, and then, in the distance, she saw it. A faint, warm glow shining through the fog like a distant star. The light came from an old farmhouse, standing alone and defiant in the enveloping gloom. Its windows cast a soft, golden glow that pierced the fog, promising shelter and safety. The house itself was aged, with peeling paint and a tin roof that sagged with time. Yet, in the shadowy landscape of fog and silence, it stood as her only refuge. Emily dashed toward it, her every step carrying the weight of desperation. Reaching the porch, she stumbled, gripping the railing as she caught her breath. Behind her, the fog had slowed, coiling at the edge of the porch as if held back by an unseen barrier, unable to cross. Safe, at last, Emily peered into the fog, which writhed and twisted in frustration, its tendrils brushing against an invisible boundary. The sight both relieved and unsettled her. The farmhouse, with its soft glow, felt like a sanctuary, a place held together by some ancient protection she could neither see nor understand. Inside, The farmhouse was warm and inviting, bathed in a soft golden glow from the fire crackling in the hearth. The scent of aged wood filled the room, mingling with faint traces of herbs and something sweet, like honey. Emily sank into a faded armchair by the fire, its cushions worn, yet comforting. As her heartbeat steadied, she let her gaze wander, noting the room's cosy, cluttered charm. Shelves filled with old books and odd trinkets lined the walls, each object appearing to hold a secret, as though the room itself had gathered memories over countless years. A soft creak echoed from the hallway, and Emily turned to see an elderly woman standing in the doorway, framed by the flickering firelight. Her form was small and hunched, wrapped in a simple, faded black dress. Her silver hair caught the fire's glow, and her face, though wrinkled with age, held an expression of wisdom and strength. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, seemed to hold depths Emily couldn't begin to fathom. "Welcome, child," the old woman greeted, her voice soft yet resonant, like the whisper of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. "I see you've escaped the fog." Emily nodded, still catching her breath. "Yes, thank you. It was chasing me." The woman's eyes sparkled with an understanding that suggested she had witnessed extraordinary things in her lifetime. "The fog is not an ordinary mist," she explained. "The fog has a way of bending time." Emily, wanting to know more, yet feeling utterly exhausted, began to feel her eyelids grow heavy. She longed to ask questions about the fog, about the house, about this strange woman, but a deep sleep claimed her before she could speak, her mind slipping away into a world of dreams. That night, her dreams were vivid and strange. She wandered through endless shadows, voices calling her name, whispering from unseen corners. They told stories of people and places she didn't know yet felt inexplicably connected to. Flickers of faces, fragments of memories, and visions of landscapes stretched out before her, like pieces of a life she hadn't yet lived. When she woke, the morning sun had risen, casting a pale light through the farmhouse windows. Outside, the fog still lingered, heavy and unmoving, like a barrier between worlds. The old woman was awake, standing in the spacious white kitchen with its marble centre island and marble floors. She looked up as Emily stirred, a warm smile on her lips. "Good morning, dear. Did you sleep well?" Emily nodded, rubbing the remnants of sleep from her eyes. "Yes, but the fog, it's still there. Why won't it go away?" The woman's hands paused, and she set down the plate she had been holding, as she looked at Emily with an expression that was both tender and sorrowful. "The fog isn't just weather, it's a doorway of sorts, a bridge through time, and it brought you here. To me." A cold shiver ran through Emily. "To you? But why?" The old woman sighed. "Because, child, I am you. Or rather, the woman you will become." Emily's breath caught, her pulse racing as she tried to grasp this revelation. "You're me?" she whispered, a mixture of disbelief and wonder filling her voice. "Yes," the older woman replied, her eyes softening with understanding. "Time has its own way of connecting us, of leading us to moments that shape our lives. Sometimes, those moments are marked by unusual meetings, as when the past and future collide. The fog knows souls, with stories unfinished. Souls who must face the shadows they will encounter." A mix of fear and curiosity tugged at Emily, her young mind struggling to process this truth. She leaned forward, her eyes wide. "But why did you bring me here?" The older Emily's face darkened, her gaze growing sombre. "To warn you. There is a man in the future who will try to come to power. A man who hides behind a mask of laughter and charm. A man who will seem harmless, like a jester in a king's court. Many will see him as foolish, even amusing, and they'll laugh at his antics, believing him to be nothing more than a harmless man with grand dreams. But he is none of those things. Emily felt a deep chill settle over her. The older woman's words carried a weight of dread, as though each syllable held the warning of something dark and irreversible. "What makes him so dangerous?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The older Emily's gaze sharpened, a fierce light in her eyes. "Because, Emily, he is willing to destroy everything to satisfy his own desires. He cares for nothing but his own ambition, and he will stop at nothing to manipulate and deceive, to stir chaos and push the world toward ruin. If he is not stopped, he will ignite a war that will bring destruction unlike anything you can imagine." Emily's hands trembled, her pulse pounding as she listened, her young heart filling with both fear and resolve. "Why me? Why must I be the one to stop him? Because you see things others cannot," her older self said, her voice steady. "You have a gift for seeing beyond masks, for recognizing darkness beneath laughter. Others will laugh with him, admire him, perhaps even follow him blindly. But you must be the one to see him for what he is. A man who will destroy the world if left unchecked." Emily swallowed, feeling the weight of her task settling upon her. She thought of the times she had sensed things others hadn't, moments when her instincts had guided her with an inexplicable certainty. The older woman rose, moving to an old chest in the corner. She pulled out a small, worn leather journal and placed it in Emily's hands. "In this book, I've written all I know about him. His lies, his ambitions, the paths he will take to twist the world to his will. Keep it close and keep it safe. There will be people who want this truth buried, and you must protect it." Emily gripped the journal tightly, feeling its rough texture beneath her fingertips, sensing the weight of the knowledge it held. The older woman smiled gently, her eyes brimming with pride and sadness. "You will be tested, my dear, but know that you are stronger than you think, and braver than you realize. And remember, I am always with you." "But I need to get you back to your own time," the old woman said, "and I have something that might help." The old woman, Emily, moved to the end of the marble island, her fingers gliding over the cool surface as she opened one of the drawers. She rummaged through the assorted contents, peppermints, utensils, and papers, until she finally unearthed what she was searching for. A small glass bottle filled with a swirling blue mist, shimmering like liquid starlight. With a gentle smile, she turned and handed the bottle to the young Emily, its surface cool and smooth against her palm. "Thank you," the young Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper as the old woman handed her the time elixir. Emily's hands shook with apprehension. The idea of returning to her own time was both exhilarating and terrifying, as she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Emily lifted the bottle to her lips and drank the elixir in one gulp. The old woman gave her a reassuring smile. "Good luck, Emily. Our paths will cross again someday." The world around the young Emily started to spin, and she felt a sense of weightlessness. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. When Emily opened her eyes, she found herself back on the path. As she looked around, the fog began to dissipate, lifting slowly, like a veil, partially drawn back. Patches of thick mist still clung to the road ahead, ghostly reminders of what she had just experienced. Looking back, Emily saw that the large white farmhouse with its front porch had vanished, her older self dissolving into the mist as if they had never existed at all. She was alone now, the only trace of her journey a faint chill in the air, and the journal pressed tightly to her chest. The path back home stretched out before her, familiar, yet somehow altered, as though each twist in the road held shadows that hadn't been there before. Every stone and tree seemed to whisper secrets, beckoning her to remember what she had glimpsed and the truths she now carried like a hidden wound.